Most people have no idea their retirement plan is fundamentally different from their parents' generation, and that difference could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm talking about the massive shift from pensions to 401s, IKs. One guarantees you income for life. The other puts all the risks squarely on your shoulders. Let me break down what that actually means for your future. Here's what happened. Decades ago, if you worked for a company for 30 years, they'd pay you a monthly check in retirement until you died. That was a pension. Today, most companies hand you a 401k and say good luck. The responsibility shifted entirely. But most workers never understood the implications of that change. A pension is technically called a defined benefit plan. The key word there is defined. Your employer promises you a specific monthly payment based on a formula. Usually, it's something like your salary times your years of service times a multiplier. Let's say you earned $70,000 in your final year, worked there for 25 years, and the multiplier is 2%. That's $35,000 per year for the rest of your life. You don't manage anything. You don't pick investments. You just collect your check. The 401k works completely differently. It's called a defined contribution plan because the only thing defined is what goes in, not what comes out. You contribute a percentage of your salary. Maybe your employer matches some of it. That money sits in an account with your name on it. You pick the investments from a menu of options. When you retire, whatever's in there is what you get. If the market crashes the year before you retire, that's your problem. If you pick bad investments, that's also your problem. Now, why did companies make this switch? Simple answer: money. Pensions are expensive and unpredictable for employers. They have to fund these promises decades into the future, and people keep living longer than expected. With a 401k, the company's obligation ends the moment they make their contribution. No lifetime liability, no pension fund to manage. They've transferred every bit of risk to you. But here's what most people miss. That transfer of risk came with a transfer of potential reward too. With a pension, you're locked into whatever formula your company uses. With a 401k, if you invest wisely and the market does well, you could end up with significantly more than a pension would have paid. You also own the account, which means you can take it with you when you change jobs. Pensions typically require you to stay with one employer for decades to get the full benefit. Let me paint a picture of how this plays out in real life. My neighbor worked for the same manufacturing company for 32 years. He retired with a pension that pays him $48,000 annually. He never worried about investment choices or market volatility. He just showed up, did his job, and knew exactly what he'd get. His son works in tech and has changed companies 4 times in 10 years. He's got a 401k worth about $600,000 at age 45. Completely different approaches, completely different outcomes. The pension calculation I mentioned earlier has some variations. Some plans use your highest earning years instead of just your final year. Others might average your top 3 or 5 years. The multiplier typically ranges from 1.5 to 2.5% per year of service. Military pensions work differently, often paying a percentage of base pay after 20 years of service. Government pensions frequently offer cost of living adjustments, which private sector pensions rarely do anymore. With a 401k, you're making constant decisions. How much should you contribute? Which funds should you pick? Should you go aggressive or conservative? Do you rebalance quarterly or annually? When should you start shifting to bonds? These aren't trivial questions. Studies show that the average investor significantly underperforms the market because they make emotional decisions, chase performance, and panic during downturns. There's another factor nobody talks about enough: longevity risk. That's the risk of outliving your money. With a pension, this risk doesn't exist. You get paid until you die, whether that's at 75 or 105. With a 401k, you have to guess how long you'll live and withdraw accordingly. Withdraw too much early on, and you might run out. withdraw too little, and you're not enjoying your retirement as much as you could. Let's talk numbers for a second. The average 401k balance for people aged 60 to 69 is around $200,000. Using the 4% rule, that generates $8,000 per year. Meanwhile, someone with a decent pension might be collecting $40,000 to $60,000 annually. The gap is enormous. However, that average is misleading. Plenty of disciplined savers have built seven-figure 401k accounts by maximizing contributions and investing consistently over decades. Vesting is another critical difference. With pensions, you typically need to work 5 to 7 years before you're vested, meaning you've earned the right to a future benefit. Leave before that, and you get nothing. The 401k money you contribute is always yours immediately. Employer contributions might have a vesting schedule, but it's usually shorter, maybe 3 to 5 years. Here's something that catches people off guard. Pensions can disappear. Companies go bankrupt. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation provides some insurance, but there are limits. I've seen people who thought they had secure pensions end up with significantly reduced benefits when their company failed. Your 401k is protected from your employer's financial problems because it's your account held separately. The tax treatment differs in important ways too. Both allow pre-tax contributions that reduce your current taxable income. Both are taxed as ordinary income when you withdraw in retirement. But 401s offer Roth options at many companies, letting you pay taxes now and withdraw tax-free later. Pensions don't give you that choice. You're getting taxable income no matter what. One advantage pensions have that's hard to replicate: simplicity. You don't need to become an investment expert. You don't need to track your portfolio or worry about sequence of returns risk. That peace of mind has real value, especially as you age and don't want to think about finance anymore. So, which is actually better? That's where things get interesting, because the answer isn't what most financial advisors will tell you. The real answer depends entirely on your personal situation, but here's what most people miss. If you have access to a pension, the question isn't whether it's better than a 401k. The question is whether you're willing to trade career flexibility for lifetime income security. That's the actual trade you're making. Think about it this way. A pension chains you to an employer. You need to stay long enough to vest, and if you want a substantial benefit, you're looking at decades with the same organization. That's fine if you love your job and your employer treats you well. But what if your boss is terrible? What if the company culture becomes toxic? What if you get an amazing opportunity elsewhere? Walking away from a pension, especially one you've contributed to for years, is financially painful. The 401k gives you freedom. You can job hop every few years, taking your retirement savings with you. In today's economy, changing jobs is often the fastest way to increase your income. People who stay with one employer typically see smaller raises than those who move around strategically. Over a career, that difference in earnings can dwarf the pension benefit you're accumulating. Let's examine a specific scenario. Sarah is 30 years old, working for a company with a pension. She's been there 3 years. Another company offers her a job with a 30% salary increase, but no pension, just a 401k with a 6% match. Should she take it? Most financial calculators would say stay for the pension, but they're not accounting for the compounding effect of higher income. That 30% raise isn't just more money now. It's higher 401k contributions, bigger employer matches, increased social security benefits, and greater lifetime earning potential. Run those numbers forward 30 years, and Sarah likely ends up wealthier by taking the higher paying job, even without the pension. Here's something else. Pensions assume you'll retire from that company. But what percentage of 30-year-olds today will actually stay with their current employer until retirement? Probably less than 10%. Most people with pensions end up leaving before they've accumulated a truly valuable benefit. They get a small monthly payment that barely covers groceries, not the comfortable retirement income they imagined. The portability issue matters more than people realize. Your 401k follows you everywhere. You can roll it into an IRA when you leave a job, consolidating everything in one place. Pensions fragment your retirement income. Work 3 different jobs with pensions over your career. You might end up with 3 small checks instead of 1 adequate one. There's also the inheritance factor. You die with $1 million 401k. That money goes to your heirs. You die with a pension. In most cases, payments stop, or your spouse gets a reduced benefit, and then nothing goes to your kids. From a wealth transfer perspective, the 401k wins decisively. Investment returns complicate this comparison significantly. The typical pension assumes returns around 7%. If you're an aggressive investor who can handle market volatility, you might average 9 or 10% over decades in your 401k. That difference is massive over 30 or 40 years. Even 1 or 2 percentage points of additional return can mean hundreds of thousands of extra dollars. But what if you're a conservative investor who panics during downturns? What if you're the person who sells everything when the market drops 20%? Then you're probably better off with a pension, because you'll be protected from your own worst impulses. Inflation deserves serious consideration. Most private pensions offer zero inflation protection. That $50,000 annual benefit sounds great now. In 30 years, with 3% average inflation, it'll have the purchasing power of about $20,000 in today's dollars. Government pensions usually include cost of living adjustments. Private sector pensions almost never do. Your 401k remains invested during retirement if you manage it properly, giving you some inflation hedge. Disability changes everything. Most pension plans include disability provisions that let you collect benefits early if you become unable to work. Your 401k just sits there. You can access it, but you're living off a fixed amount of savings, not guaranteed income. If you work in a physically demanding job where disability is a real risk, the pension's protection is valuable. Here's my honest assessment. If you're young, ambitious, and career-focused, the 401k is almost certainly better. The flexibility it provides will enable you to maximize your earning potential, which matters more than anything else early in your career. If you're older, risk-averse, and value stability, a pension is probably the better choice, assuming it's with a financially stable employer. The optimal strategy? If you have access to both, max them out. Contribute enough to your 401k to get the full employer match, then let the pension build in the background. You get the best of both worlds. Guaranteed income, plus personal savings you control. But forced to choose, I'd take the 401k 9 times out of 10 because control matters. I want to decide how my money is invested. I want the ability to change jobs without financial penalty. I want to leave something to my children. The pension offers security, but it comes at the cost of autonomy, and that's a price I'm not willing to pay. Your priorities might be different, and that's fine. Just make sure you're choosing based on what actually matters to you, not what some calculator says is optimal. Financial security isn't just about maximizing dollars. It's about building a life that works for you. The shift from pensions to 401s, Ks, represents one of the biggest financial experiments in modern history, and we're all living through it right now. Nobody knows exactly how this will play out over the next few decades. What we do know is that the responsibility for retirement has moved from corporations to individuals, and most people weren't prepared for that change. If you've got a pension, understand what you're giving up if you walk away. If you've got a 401k, take it seriously, because nobody else will do it for you. Contribute consistently, invest intelligently, and don't panic when markets get volatile. The system isn't perfect, but it's what we've got. Make it work for your situation, not someone else's idea of what retirement should look like.